Hi, excuse me. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm going to kick things off with a couple of announcements. And while I do that, if folks can introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be great. Thank you for joining us this afternoon to talk round 2 of our implementation roundtable. The announcement that I wanted to share with folks was thank you so much to everyone who submitted RFI responses to the NASEO RFI that was due last week. I have over 100 responses to read and post. The goal is to have them up sometime next week. I'm not adding commentary to any of them, just getting them online and organized around different implementation styles. So there'll be sure to be a NASEO announcement of some kind once that goes live. I think that's it from me. I will drop a link in the chat to the NASEO events page so that you can sign up for future roundtables. We've got one for contractors and one for financiers, in addition to sort of the ad hoc miscellaneous group. And that group will be coming up next week. These are the folks that have submitted program elements, but not necessarily comprehensive program design. So we'll hear from them next week. So I think with that, we've got a lot of great folks lined up to speak with us this afternoon. It's going to be a tight agenda with all the folks. So I've asked all of our panelists to come with just 3 to 5 minutes of, introductions of themselves, where they work. In addition, if anything they might want to highlight from their RFI response, anything they think is unique, interesting, and then there's always sort of the option to talk about opportunities that you see in the near term around collaboration with the state energy offices. So I am going to turn things over to the panel. I'm going to introduce folks in no particular order to give them the spotlight for a minute. And then, as for usual with these conversations, feel free to put questions, comments in the chat. And I will bring them up to the group once we've done all of the introductions. And after the introductions as well, I know there's a lot of other implementers on the line. Thank you for being here, even if I couldn't give you an official speaking slot. But please feel free to you all to jump in the conversation discussion part of the call. So with that, I'm just gonna go first on my list is June from TRC. June, if you are with us, please feel free to jump in with your introductions.
Cool.
And we can circle back with June if she's not here. Angie, would you like to jump in and introduce yourself then?
Great, thanks, Maddie. Do you want me to just dive into?
Please.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you, Maddie, and thanks to NASEO for organizing these roundtables and allowing us to participate and kind of pontificate about how to make these programs most effective. I'm Angie Zeke-Malik with DNV. If you're not familiar with DNV, the relevant part of our work here is that we offer a full suite of clean energy programs on behalf of utilities and local governments for commercial and industrial sectors. So this includes prescriptive, custom, and direct install energy efficiency programs. We also manage and implement pilots, and we have got a growing suite of EV and electrification and distributed generation programs as well. DNV also implements a lot of midstream programs, which is one of the program models that we'll focus on today. We're here to make some recommendations, which are reflected in our NASEO RFI response as well, offering some insights about a midstream model that might work well to deliver point of sale rebates, which would work obviously more on the HEEHR side of the home rebate programs. But you know, it's a model that supports that seamless customer experience that's been kind of a consistent recommendation to DOE from stakeholders, and something that we find is a key for a successful program as well. So with a midstream model, this is a model where the end user does not have to fill out any paperwork or applications. All the activity takes place upstream at the distributor level. So the distributor offers a point of sale discount when they sell the equipment to the contractor, and the contractor passes that discount on to the end use customer, usually noting on the invoice, you know, this discount brought to you by your state's HEEHR program or whatever. And this model is nice. It's simple. It's, you know, rather than dealing with thousands of diffuse customers, you're dealing with a concentrated population of a handful of distributors. So you can really focus your educational efforts on them. And, you know, we've found that this helps make them evangelists for the program as well. You know, and it's a proven model. It's been in various markets throughout the country for many years, and it also helps with a nice quick launch of programs. And so this is, you know, another one of our recommendations is, you know, getting these rebates into the market sooner rather than later is ideal. So our recommendation would be to, you know, focus on a couple high impact measures, whether it's air source heat pumps or heat pump water heaters. You could really get a rebate into the market in 3 or 4 months with those, you know, tried and true measures, high impact measures, and then, you know, use a little bit more lead time to focus on some of the more tricky ones like the electric panels or wiring, where you might have to create a QPL from scratch or something. And then, you know, just some general recommendations based on our experience with these programs is, you know, thinking about the kind of data that you'd like to collect, that the state would like to collect. You know, that'll depend on the guidance from DOE, but, you know, obviously you'll need data on the front end to verify customer eligibility and equipment eligibility, but then thinking also on the back end, what you'll need to collect for program evaluation up to DOE too, and getting all that set up on the program launch side will make it run smoother and minimize IT costs. And then of course, you know, working in the utility space, I would always recommend coordinating with the utility in your state if that's appropriate. You know, a lot of these demand side management programs have been in the market for decades and decades and are quite mature. And, you know, you can take advantage of established relationships between distributors and utilities and implementation contractors. So there's an opportunity to build on that rather than reinvent the wheel. So, you know, finally, I think, you know, we'll see what DOE has to say about incentive stacking, but then, you know, if the state feels like it's appropriate as well, recommend allowing customers to stack incentives to really buy down that cost and amplify the impact of these programs. Thanks. Back to you, Maddie.
Thank you so much. We're just going to go straight through all of our speakers and then save all of our comments and questions for an open discussion at the end. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to VEIC. And Dan and Nikki, how would you like to kick us off? Please go ahead.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dan Riley. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs and Policy here at VEIC. I'm joined by my colleague, Nikki Kuhn, our Director of Consulting. I know we only have 5 minutes, so I'm going to talk very, very fast. I think most of you are familiar with VEIC, but just in case for those that are not, we are a nationally recognized clean energy nonprofit with over 30 years of experience implementing programs and pilots that optimize energy use and reduce energy burdens for low-income customers, advancing emerging technologies and innovative program models. Our core expertise is really in energy efficiency, building decarbonization and transportation electrification, really with a unique focus on low-income customers and disadvantaged communities. Over 50% of our program benefits go to socially vulnerable communities. You know, we've been collaborating with state energy offices for many years. We plan, design, and implement statewide programs and initiatives like Efficiency Vermont here in Vermont, where I'm located, the District of Columbia Sustainable Energy Utility, and Efficiency Smart in Ohio and Delaware. Last year, we worked in 24 states. We have key roles on the program admin teams working with SEOs for Focus on Energy in Wisconsin, Hawaii Energy, and 2 big California statewide electric emerging technologies through our CalNext and Caltech programs. In addition, we work with SEOs across the country, in Illinois and Iowa and Missouri on TRMs, in Rhode Island, New Hampshire on energy efficiency and resource standards, a bunch of others. Just in terms of going back to your point, Maddie, and thinking about the RFP and some of the things that I wanted to highlight, really the importance of planning, planning up front, making sure you have a full picture of your state's needs that can be met with these programs, understanding the primary characteristics of housing market, if it's a heating climate, what kind of heating fuels are being used, in a cooling climate, how many homes already have air conditioning, understanding what programs exist, and really just stress that if you need analysis or market research, now is really the time. For example, we've seen in our work states that have very little heat pump uptake to date. There's a real need to map out, why, what the current state of the market is, strategies to overcome known barriers, as well as ensure, strong retail distribution, make sure that those supply chain and contractor networks are in place. And really, in terms of planning, developing those goals for the program. LMI households have historically been pretty underserved by existing residential retrofit programs. Our experience has shown that without strong metrics tied to serving those households, incentives can quickly get snapped up by the higher income households who have the knowledge and the resources to act right away. The 10-year timeframe for the IRA funding is great. It offers an opportunity to really make a difference in communities that are historically underserved, but achieving that really requires upfront goal setting and planning. And that's what we wanted to highlight in our RFP response, making sure you're coordinating with other state agencies that are running programs like SNAP, LIHEAP, WAP, financing agencies, HFAs, those kinds of things, and really just helping people, support them throughout their total customer journey. Lastly, really the importance of identifying marketing and outreach strategies and workforce development needs. Here in Vermont, we've worked very hard for many years to really establish Efficiency Vermont as that trusted brand. When people think energy efficiency, they go there. And so working to develop those brands early, thinking about existing resources, those kinds of things. And then really the workforce capacity, a skilled workforce and contractor network is essential. We highlighted that in our response in terms of helping to build those. It really won't matter if the heat pump is free, if there's no one around to install it properly, make sure it works. And so, just the last point I'll highlight is that workforce capacity goes beyond the need for contractors just doing installations. A robust retrofit environment really includes auditors, construction managers, and firms that can do inspections. And so that's a quick overview of that. I hope I kept it under 5 minutes. So let me turn it back to you, Maddie, with a big thank you for all of your work that you've been doing.
Yeah, thank you for that. Happy to organize as always. Let's go next to Franklin. I'll turn things over to Alyssa.
Yeah, thanks so much for pulling this together, Maddie. We really appreciate the opportunity to be part of the roundtable today. So my name is Alyssa Latucci, and first off, I have a bit of a cold, so I'm hoping I can get through 5 minutes without coughing, so I'll apologize on the front end. But I am the Director of Market Development for Federal and State Programs at Franklin Energy. Franklin Energy is an implementer of energy efficiency programs, and we work across the country. We are in 30 different states, and we work with over 60 utilities right now. And we're helping each of them reach their energy efficiency goals. And we deliver end-to-end solutions for energy management needs through a portfolio of products and services. And to keep this quick, I wanted to highlight a couple of our core competencies that align with the IRA rebate programs. And these are all kind of highlighted in our RFI response, which you'll all see soon enough. But the first one that I wanted to highlight is around program development and management. We have developed, implemented, and managed programs that are similar to what homes and HEEHR programs would look like. Some of you may remember the webinars back in January that NASEO hosted, where we highlighted a program that we developed and implemented in California, which was a really great example of what a model type program could look like. And so we have experience, or I'm sorry, a measured program, not modeled. And so we have experience with the measured programs, and we also have experience with modeled programs as well. And then in terms of programs that resemble what a HEEHR program would look like, we have lots of experience issuing rebates as well. On an annual basis, we issue over $100 million in rebates, 28 million of which go to low-income households. So we have a lot of experience on both homes and HEEHR type programs. Another core competency that we have is around platforms. We have integrated online marketplace solutions that are designed, developed, marketed, and fulfilled with an in-house team of experts. And those experts have expertise in e-commerce, program marketing, and logistics. And the last core competency that I wanted to highlight is around products. So we do the program development and management, but then we also manufacture over 375 core energy efficiency and water conservation products. We have a long history of distributing large quantities of products on behalf of other manufacturers as well, including smart thermostats and EV chargers. And we also partner with other distributors to simplify large-scale sourcing of products like heat pumps and insulation. So really, these core competencies really kind of come together to show that Franklin is really well suited to help states simplify their approach and meet the goals that they have when it comes to the IRA rebates. Our experience across the country, and we have almost 30 years of experience, that allows us to pull from the best practices that we've learned so that we can find flexible solutions that really fits the individual needs of those states. So that's really Franklin Energy in a nutshell. I'm looking forward to the conversation, and I'll also drop my email in the chat, and so you can feel free to reach out to me outside of the meeting as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Alyssa. Next up, we have Felix from Guidehouse.
Thanks, Maddie, and good afternoon, everybody, and apologies for standing between you and a long weekend at this point. We'll try to make this brief and informative. Thank you, everybody. For those of you who may not be familiar with Guidehouse, and hopefully many of you are, we're a large national consultancy, really the outgrowth of PwC Consulting spinning off about 5 years ago, and then the combination with a firm I'm sure many of you are familiar with, which is Navigant, which is really where a lot of our depth and experience in the energy field comes in. We really have approached this, and I help lead a dedicated team out of our energy and sustainability and infrastructure practice dedicated around this whole area of the IRA rebates. We've been talking to many of you over the last several months, and we really come at this from our own experience working with over 65 states, localities, and counties in the areas of large federally funded programs that have had to be developed, particularly around BIL, COVID, the ERAP funding out there. So in talking to many of you, I think some key points that we've tried to highlight, and again, that have emerged out of the conversations with all of you, have been the following. First of all, intelligent design. We understand that this may not even be one of the only programs you have in your broader portfolio of grants and programs right now. So really thinking through these programs and how do you both leverage the needs you will have around large programs like this, but also consider them in the context of your broader portfolio and other programs that you're going to have out there. Also define outcomes. Again, talking to many of you, we understand that you may need to really target the customers who you're looking at. These funds are not going to be necessarily as easy to distribute as other programs. They're going to require a very specific targeting and customer outreach program in many of these cases. So really configuring a program that's really aligned to the customer areas you want to go into. Importantly, collaboration. Just looking at the participants here today, this is a large ecosystem of partners that want to help you on this. Not just ourselves from the program administration and design perspective, but certainly financing partners, retailing partners, and others. We really understand that you've got to design a program that's going to take those considerations in place, because the practical reality is that in many cases, for customers, you may not necessarily as an SEO be the point of the spear for these customers. They may be going to retailers, they may be going to community-based organizations seeking help on this. So really having a program design that takes all those collaboration partners into perspective. And then certainly and importantly, efficiency and transparency. As many of you have already said here, this has to be a seamless customer experience for it to work. Customers have to be able to gain both their eligibility for this and access to these rebates in a very seamless way, which again, may not just take place working with the SEO, but may have to take place with a retailer or somebody else, but also taking place a very strong fraud and risk component to it. We understand, again, from talking to many of you, that unfortunately that is part of the equation here. And being able to avoid those things, not only so that the customers get their rebates, but that other members of the ecosystems aren't stuck in situations where maybe the funds are depleted faster than they expect because of some of these elements. So that also has to be taken into consideration. I am joined on the call today by my colleagues Karen Moss, Irene Pasternak, and Greg Heller, who again will be available for questions here. So again, thank you to all of you we've had an opportunity to talk to already. Please take a look at our RFI, which Maddie will be putting on the website, and we look forward to meeting and talking to many of you. Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you. And last but not least, we're going to Claire with BlockPower.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Maddie and the NASEO team for organizing this roundtable. My name is Claire Doyle-Dowd. I'm the Director of Policy and Community at BlockPower. BlockPower is a Black-funded technology company launched in 2014 to deliver smarter, greener, and healthier buildings for all. We have a strong focus and history in serving the needs of LMI residents and property owners in environmental justice and justice 40 communities. BlockPower aims to support state energy offices in the implementation of the homes and HEEHR electrification programs via 4 important pathways that reflect our core strengths and our passion for this work. The first pathway is data-driven opportunity targeting. Each of these pathways can be developed separately or in unison with other partners. The other 3 pathways are program implementation, financing, and workforce development. The first pathway, data-driven opportunity targeting, is critical so that states can get the biggest bang for their buck with federal rebate dollars. That is the need that BlockMaps meets. BlockMaps is a planning software tool that helps states and cities target residential buildings that are in the greatest need of energy efficiency retrofits. BlockMaps also transparently tracks program performance metrics. This allows BlockPower and our partners to build trust in the identification and impact evaluation process. Many cities and partners are already using BlockMaps to target high potential buildings and complete effective retrofit programs, including ComEd in Chicago and the city of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Second, we have program implementation. BlockPower can support every aspect of program implementation from end-to-end program management. That means we can cover all of it or one component of it, such as focusing on upgrading low and moderate income multifamily sector buildings. BlockPower's focus on underserved communities means that we know how to meet households and building owners where they are, including project and construction management and oversight, and facilitating all phases of the retrofit project through a trusted contractor network. BlockPower has contracts with a number of states, municipalities, and utilities to design and implement programs, including large-scale projects to retrofit hundreds of buildings in Ithaca, New York, and San Jose, California. Next, BlockPower provides financing. As we know, these rebates will likely not cover the full cost of efficiency and electrification projects. This is a challenge, given that many of the homes these rebates target do not have any disposable income, not to mention thousands of dollars to cover a full electrification retrofit. BlockPower uses a unique equitable financing mechanism established through a deep understanding of how to best meet low and moderate income communities' financial needs. This includes offering optional financing for pre-retrofit health and safety upgrades, which frequently are barriers for LMI home energy efficiency and electrification. States can leverage BlockPower's optional financing tools to amplify the impacts of the rebate program funding. BlockPower offers financing services with a number of our existing programs as well, including our contract with the City and County of Denver. Our fourth pathway is workforce development, another area which is a core strength of BlockPower. We have proven experience in workforce development in communities most impacted by climate change and historical underinvestment. We partner with local community-based organizations to apply their knowledge with our national expertise to build trust while increasing employment, training, and job placement. As my last example, in New York City, BlockPower has a contract to implement a $108 million workforce training program to develop job placement opportunities for residents in city building improvement and building upgrade careers. Over 3,000 workers have been trained to date. In conclusion, BlockPower will meet states where they are to support the implementation of the electrification rebate programs. I'm Claire Doyle Dowd. I'm happy to answer your questions, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here. Thank you, Maddie, for organizing this with your efficiency and excellence as always.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for giving your remarks. We'll turn now to questions and comments from the group, but maybe I'll start first with the request already for speaker information. So if you haven't already, dropping your contact information in the chat to our panelists, that would be great. And so I mentioned this at the top, but just as a reminder, if you want to ask a question, comment, please feel free to put it in the chat or to raise your hand or turn on your camera, and I will take that as an indication that you want to ask a question. While folks are thinking, I'm going to jump in with a couple of my own that are open to everyone, but my first question is sort of inspired by something that Felix mentioned about defining outcomes and targeting different buildings, different populations. If you were a state in their shoes now, do you have any suggestions for how to get started making those tough choices, assuming that states are going to do some targeting instead of a first come, first serve approach?
Thanks, Maddie. And I'll also ask, for example, my colleague Greg Heller to step in here. So again, talking to many of you, we understand that you've got a, for example, different segmentations you may have to look at. We've done some analysis, again, that we've shared with a number of you that really kind of whittle down the fact that as significant as these numbers are, it does unfortunately whittle down to just a handful of checks in many instances. And so targeting the right populations, maybe looking at, for example, segmentations by counties and most needs or localities and such, is going to be incredibly important at the beginning. Urban versus rural. We know a number of the states here have much more of an impact in rural communities than in urban communities. So that's a lot of what we're going to expect to see in that early design. Much more so than organizing the program itself. It's really understanding which populations are going to be where the most impact is going to be achieved. Greg, let me just ask you to step in. Any comments from you on that?
Yeah, I would just add, we've done a lot of work that required targeting local communities through our 16 emergency rental assistance programs that we're associated with. And I previously did that work when I was in public sector and in community development in Philadelphia for about 15 years. It's a combination of, you need a really intense data-driven approach. And we have a bunch of tools that we've developed over the past few years that synthesize and overlay data to do really good targeting to ensure that you are focusing on low-income households, high poverty neighborhoods, disconnected neighborhoods, and hard-to-reach populations. So it's a combination of that data-driven approach and also trusted place-based partners. That is the part that is hard to put into place, but that there are existing networks in many communities. There are also many communities that we've worked with, especially in rural areas where there aren't strong and robust networks of place-based partners. And in those cases, we've actually had to set up boots on the ground teams to do door-to-door outreach, make house calls, set up in rec centers and libraries, and plug into more regional place-based partners to try to customize that approach. There are a lot of households, and I know this from, I used to run a home repair grant program in Philadelphia that did 2,000 to 3,000 homes a year. And households that are living in disinvested areas frequently have distrust of government programs. You have to really reduce administrative burden. You have to do a high touch approach. You have to build trust. So these are the components that we put in place in tandem with a really strong data-driven approach to try and reach those households, meet them where they are, and establish the type of program delivery that will really be able to reach them and get them the assistance that they need.
Thanks. Any other panelists want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I will. I really appreciate kind of the focus on the community-based organization and local on the boot or on the street engagement, with community organizations. BlockPower has really seen that work a lot in our communities. In New York City, for example, we have a very robust engagement with houses of worship. We have a building electrification program through NASEO that we are building electrification and completing retrofits of houses of worship. So houses of worship are trusted parties, for example, in rural communities as well as urban communities. And so we, through our BlockPower staffing, for example, we have clean energy associates that are really working locally in these communities to build out these trusted networks. So I really echo the importance of that.
Thanks. Any other folks want to comment on how you've had to make choices about targeting different groups with efficiency programs or electrification programs?
I
I'm
would just
happy
make
to
Go ahead.
Sorry, Nikki Kieran with VEIC. I would just add here as well that, one of the things that we've done in a couple of different places where we work is also focus on just underserved in general, because low income, a lot of the data you get in from low income data sources is going to not be inclusive of all of the LMI households and also all of the underserved households. So we've worked with various programs around the country to map out where services have been successful and where they haven't been, and really focus in on those areas where there are more barriers, because you might not always catch those communities and those individuals through just a low income screen.
Maddie, may I just comment on one other item? So BlockMaps is also I mentioned it in my remarks. It's an incredibly valuable planning tool. BlockPower has mapped all of the buildings of residential buildings across the United States, and this allows the customer, in this case, the state energy office or utility or a city, for example, to map out all of the buildings to understand their current energy use, and then to understand with overlays of Justice 40 and environmental justice measures that we include how to approach various scenarios of targeting. So it's effective, it's efficient, and it can meet state energy offices' needs in a very effective way.
Lloyd, I see you've got your hand up, but I wanted to go to Angie first. I think you were jumping in earlier, Angie.
Yeah, just a quick note, agree with all of that as well, and would just make an additional plug to work with the state's utilities. They have a lot of programs that have been targeting these populations and have some lessons learned for what works and what doesn't. And even if they don't have programs, they probably have a bill assistance program in the state, and that could be a group of folks that you could target right off the bat.
Thank you. Lloyd?
I just want to add, I mean, everybody here is making great comments. Again, I'm Lloyd Cass, I'm with Franklin. But just to sort of add that, not just us, but folks who have implemented these programs are often for utilities, but we have collected a lot of data that can be anonymized and used for what we would, you might call propensity modeling, and we use a lot of propensity models to either identify the likelihood of a customer to participate and certain attributes there, and the intersection of that with the likelihood of the customer to actually save. Because one of the things, if you look at a group of customers that sort of blindly participate in some of these programs and actually measure the impact, not every customer experiences utility bill savings. And if you are a low or moderate income customer, that's a problem, right? So you want only, you want to be as equitable and democratic as you possibly can while serving underserved communities, but you don't want to be the one responsible for increasing somebody's utility bill either. So there may be other ways in which you can help somebody through policy and programs. But energy efficiency, there are things that often need to get done first before energy efficiency can really save household money. And we have a lot of data that can help steer a program in that direction.
Interesting. Thank you. Anything, maybe just following up on Lloyd's point there, from a program design angle, any recommendations from the implementers that we've got on the line about how to sort of like take those considerations into who might not be participating, who might not be benefiting, and like how do you sort of break that down and think about it in terms of program design? Any thoughts there?
Well, I mean, I think some of it has to do with the tools you use to screen and assess customers. And, you have to be really careful just because they're, under homes, obviously there's going to have to be that 20% savings on consumption. So for a modeled program, and then on the measured side, there's a similar thing, but there are risks, I'd say, on the HEEHR side where, an uninsulated home that suddenly is using a heat pump, or a home where the air conditioning wasn't working all that well, and you install a heat pump and now people are using the air conditioning, that can change their utility bill profile. So it's a lot of it is education, but it's but also screening, quality assurance with the contractors involved, because that's where some of the unscrupulousness kind of kicks in. So there's, but ultimately, targeting the right customers based on our experience can avoid going to those customers that are at risk of not experiencing savings in the first place.
Yeah. Any other panelists want to jump in on this point? Feel free.
Yeah, Maddie, this is Dan from VEIC again. Just to say, in terms of that question around who might not be benefiting, it is important to look at it at the household level. It's important to look at it at the income level, but not to forget sort of at the technology level too, in terms of program design. Looking at some of our experience in terms of heat pump uptake, we were really able to see a big uptake in New England because the people that weren't participating in the program were in the midstream, right, in the supply chain. They weren't receiving any of the incentives at the distribution level or at the sort of at that level. And so, not to forget that point as it relates to sort of technology uptake too. And we've seen a lot of that in our experience at VEIC.
Interesting.
While VEIC is at the table, I would just add here too that the importance of engaging participants, and in this case, maybe non-participants in traditional utility programs in the program design effort, we find to be incredibly important, because the reason that certain communities are underserved is because they're not participating for some reason. We really need to understand what it takes to develop and design a program that is going to work for them. And that has to do with, like I said, talking directly to the participants, and as others have mentioned as well, those trusted voices of the participants that we're wanting to draw into the program, really dig into why things may have not been working for them before, so that you can design a solution that will.
Felix, please.
Yeah, just briefly, and supporting what everybody's saying, but again, as if we've engaged a number of the SEOs, we understand that the situation is different in each one of your states. And you really do need to think in terms of just a multi-channel, omni, marketing type of an approach. And what I mean by that is that not everybody's going to rely on going to a utility site. Not everybody's going to be going to an SEO site. And you may not even go to a site, period. So whatever we take into consideration to hit the right levels of communities are going to have to take into consideration, participating in programs that are maybe focused on the retailers or maybe on the CBOs. It's going to have to be a very multifaceted program, which is, again, it's a long way of saying that there's not going to be a one size fits all here for all the states. It's going to be really important in this design phase to not just figure out what communities you're targeting, but multiple channels potentially to get them to be able to be participants on this.
Interesting. Alyssa?
Yeah, and I agree with that. And I think it kind of calls into to play the importance of grading and stacking as well, because you know, a household might not meet the thresholds needed for homes programs, but they might fit for a utility program. And so providing a kind of one-stop shop so that they can see all of their options and make the best choices for them will be really important for households going forward.
Kind of along those lines in terms of trusted partners, I wanted to pivot slightly. Claire, I think you mentioned in your opening remarks that trusted contractor network, and that is like a personal concern of mine about how we're going to manage all of these contractors out there in the world doing this work. So I'm curious to hear from all of you best practices, recommendations when it comes to managing that contractor network. And if you guys have thoughts or experiences, do you always run programs with sort of like a vetted contractor network? Do you allow circumstances for like contractors just to apply to different rebate programs being out of network? Any thoughts you have on that topic? I appreciate them.
Sure. DNV runs a variety of programs that have both open and closed contractor networks. I think we tend to recommend an open contractor network, and we have experience managing contractors, providing education and training within energy efficiency programs. And we also do a lot of trade ally surveys, and getting continuous feedback from them, we find is a great way to continuously improve the programs as well. And we have contractor targeting initiatives, focusing on contractors that deliver high amounts of savings and incentives for the program, and then focusing on them, and can really also help amplify impact.
I'd be happy to chime in. I didn't raise my virtual hand, but BlockPower has a lot of also engagement with manufacturers, Daikin, Mitsubishi, Fujitsu, and others. And we have worked with them also with their contractor networks. That's been an important partnership that we've had. The other thing is that in what we have found in some of the programs that we are currently running in California and San Jose and Denver, Menlo Park, New York City, Ithaca, and Buffalo, and elsewhere, is that engaging the contractors in a trusted relationship really early on is a key. I mean, that may sound very trite, but what we do is have virtual meetings or in-person meetings in San Jose, for example, with the contractor network and contractors, and build a relationship with them so that they are incentivized by the objectives of the program and really build trust with the program partner. And so, it's a little bit of some legs of the stool in our instance of, working with manufacturers, the contractor network, and with BlockPower and other partners to build out those relationships. The other unique thing that I'll just mention, I would say about BlockPower related to the workforce program is that our workforce program in New York City trains a lot of people who have low skills, who have never been in clean energy. And then we, through our contractor network in New York City, we do on-the-job training with these individuals so that they are working through our contractor network on solar installation, and for example, in Rikers Island or other places. And then that contractor network also becomes an important place for a permanent placement of some of the individuals who have gone through that workforce program, and then they are placed in a permanent position with some of the contractors that we have worked with.
Yeah, I want to get to workforce recruitment, but first let's go to Irene and then Dan.
Thank you. Thank you, Maddie. Irene Pasternak, I'm with Guidehouse. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about sort of vendor management from general risk management perspective, because a lot of times when you're dealing with a lot of different types of vendors, fraud is definitely a big part of that area as well. So vetting the vendors from starting with their existence and then their expertise in the industry, their credentials is definitely something that has to be a part of the program design and has to be done at the beginning of the program. So we're doing a lot of that work as well.
And just really quickly, what we've seen in terms of best practices for contractor networks, the first is really to Alyssa's point around rating and stacking. You know, we found that compensating contractors for their time is the best way to get them to attend a training. And so being able to leverage the other federal, you know, the HOPE funding, I know it's a much smaller pot than others, but being able to pull in, you know, other parts of Bill and IRA that could potentially help with compensating workers for their time is really, really critical. And the other thing that we've seen, you know, in Vermont, the power of establishing that trusted brand, right? We have an efficiency excellence network that has a logo that contractors can put on the website, that consumers can know to trust. That part is really, really critical, that, you know, right away it's the seal of approval.
Interesting, thank you. Let's dive into contractor recruitment, workforce recruitment generally. Of all the pain points, this one might be especially painful. It is for me, maybe not for all of you, but curious for the group that we have here, if you have any good examples, lessons learned about what it looks like to engage with the workforce, get them on board with these new programs, maybe in a state where there's not a ton of existing programming around this.
Hey, Maddie, just a, I guess, just a clarifying question. When you're talking workforce, are you talking about workforce for operating a program, managing the program, or are you talking about?
Could have been more clear. Thank you for that question. I'm talking about the contractors that will be in the houses doing the improvements.
I mean, I can take a crack at this, Maddie. I'd say that, you know, at least our experience is when trying to ramp up a program in a place that maybe doesn't have as much of a developed market. A lot of it is that having a very, very supportive, you know, contractor engagement program where we are not just letting them know how the program works and everything else, but showing the value proposition of, oh, if you add this many more crews, you can get this volume of work and so forth. And then also, you know, taking responsibility where we can to connect contractors and hopefully working with states to, you know, with some resources, because a lot of the time is there are training opportunities, but they're not necessarily under the same umbrella. So sort of helping connect those dots and build, you know, kind of close out the ecosystem a little bit. And we've also worked with, we actually have some expert partners who are also pretty savvy at connecting contractors, and we work with them in a couple of places where we're starting up programs or looking to staff up, connecting contractors specifically with resources in those states or even the U.S. Department of Labor resources, which provide a lot of on-the-job training dollars. So the contractor isn't out a lot of money during this period of time where they're still ramping up the productivity of the employees. So you can get people who are willing to do the work, but maybe don't have the background and sort of build that pipeline. And we have a couple of partners we work with in different communities who are very, very skilled at that. And that's sort of, you know, part of what Franklin does is try to find partners that plug those types of holes. And workforce development is one that we are finding we're plugging more and more and more. So.
Thanks, Nikki.
So I want to just acknowledge, like, this is such a hard question. I mean, even for the states that do have existing programs, like building up the capacity to be able to do all of the work that is going to be coming with Homes and HEEHR is going to be a huge challenge. And for those areas that don't have as much capacity, I think what we found is being creative. Think about what contractors are in other industries that could well align with energy efficiency work. One of the examples that we've seen here in Vermont and in the Northeast is working with fuel dealers to train them how to install heat pumps. You know, electrification is happening. This is another, you know, source of revenue for those folks to be able to, you know, kind of evolve their business model along with the electrification trend. Home construction, you know, home builders, if there's a dip in the home building market, maybe there's some opportunities to do residential retrofits. But it is an incredibly hard and it's a lengthy process. So I think that the other thing to really acknowledge here as well is just remember there's a long game here. There's a lot of opportunities to build local workforce capacity and economic development opportunities for states, and it will take time. It's not something you can turn on a dime.
That is actually a great, oh, Claire, did you want to add something?
And
Oh,
I was
just briefly, I really echo everyone's comments. I think Dan brought up something that I think I would just also amplify, is that when a program is I forget the term that you used, Dan, but maybe it was like labeled, or when there is kind of something where it is not just kind of organic, but it is part of a program that is understood, where there's engagement with the local community. That's where we have found the most benefit, and being part of a contractor network that is aiming to have an outcome over a defined period of time, where there is a robust local engagement. We have found that to be a real source of uptick in Ithaca, in San Jose, in Buffalo, for example.
Yeah, thank you. Gregory, and then maybe also Angie had something.
Yeah, I just wanted to tag on to what Nikki was saying. I agree that a lot of states are viewing this and already do view, you know, home repair programs that are funded through things like CDBG and LIHEAP and WAP as economic drivers, and especially, you know, in urban environments, they're also seen as opportunities for accelerating small minority women-owned businesses. And there's infrastructure around that which doesn't exist in more rural areas. But I mean, I think it's going to be very hard to not have an open contractor network, to not be using this as an opportunity to recruit and train contractors. So this is going to be a big part of the approach, is the technical assistance infrastructure. And it's going to involve ongoing TA. It's going to involve B2B events. It's probably going to involve, in many places, working with financial institutions to provide lines of credit and operating capital for those contractors. This is going to be a big part of the program approach in a lot of places, just by you know, political and practical necessity.
Thank you. Angie, and then Felix.
Sure, thanks. Just one additional note to, when you're thinking about contractors, is one thing that we often do is take program design directly to contractors. I think someone else mentioned, you know, taking it to end users, but contractors is another way to design a program around their needs, making it easier for them to participate. And if it's easy for them to participate, then it's easier for them to focus on their business and grow their business.
Over to you, Felix.
Thanks, Maddie. Hey, kind of different take on it, but I want to underscore what Nikki just said about the long game here and the fact that this is such a strong economic engine. I unfortunately, for I think everybody in this call, what's going on back here in Washington is kind of top of mind with the debt ceiling discussions and stuff. And I think we all know that programs like this are unfortunately being looked at. So Maddie, I'm sure NASEO is all over this, but we get the sense that this argument about the importance of this being an economic engine, not just rebates, but a real differentiator in terms of small retailers, contracts and such, is just not being made strongly enough right now. And so maybe a bit of a plug for NASEO's government relations arm, but that programs like this need a stronger message right now about how important they really can be to the communities out there.
That's interesting. And I do also think that probably reflects a lot of state energy office goals in the sense that economics is always top of mind for all of their governors. And that it's, but from what I can tell, it reflects pretty strongly in what the state energy offices are doing. But maybe we need a lot of voice around that topic just to reiterate that we're not just giving out money here. But along those lines, as we have the last few minutes here with all the mention of the long game, want to see if we can sort of shift away for just a minute about just how hard this is to like what our goals and visions are for what we want this like long game to look like. So if anyone wants to share what they are excited about, looking forward to, what you hope this will result in, please jump in.
I would just say that, you know, the home electrification is not the end goal here. The end goal is load shifting and cleaning up of supply. And so in parallel to electrification at the home level, while other kind of hard to abate industries figure out how to use less gas. So, you know, the first step is getting in a heat pump water heater. The second step is putting a control on it. So thinking more about that in terms of the long game.
I would just like to add that I think also is, you know, these programs, you know, we may, you know, and I've brought this up in other contexts, you know, in the legislation, these rebate levels are maximums, right? And to the extent we're trying to build a sustainable market, I think one of the experiences that many of us who have worked, particularly in the utility space, where we're trying to optimize budgets and garner participation with the minimum amount of rebate level. You don't want to overpay for, you know, especially in you know, market rate homeowners don't want to overpay them when they're willing to do this for a smaller rebate level. So to the extent that you can, you maybe go out a little fast, close to the max with some of these rebate levels, but then, you know, constantly look at, if I dial it back, what's going to be the impact on participation rates, and try to continuously dial that back so you have more money to spread around to more participants, and you can start bringing in private capital in the form of financing and, you know, energy efficiency as a service and other things, as well as the, you know, what utilities might offer for load shifting, as Angie pointed out, and being able to really, you know, use this money to seed a longer standing market versus just getting all the money flying out the door as fast as possible.
Erin, I see you've got your hand up if you want to jump in.
Great, thank you. Yeah, thanks for this great session and the whole series that NASEO has put together. A lot of great points being shared today. I sit with Opinion Dynamics, which specializes in evaluations, and I know that that hasn't been to date a huge part of the discussion here, because I think often folks think, well, evaluation, you know, it comes later. Like, let's make sure at the end of everything that, you know, we've done it the way that we wanted to. So we submitted a few comments to the RFI just on the topic of developmental evaluation principles, which is really the concept of getting evaluation included in your project plans from the beginning, having that third party sort of iterative check on how things are going so that you can actually adjust throughout the course of the program life cycle. So, you know, a lot of the state energy offices have talked about concerns over waste, fraud, and abuse. And, you know, we've heard a lot of really great ideas here today about how to properly implement these programs to maximum effect. So to make those programs, you know, absolutely supportable and airtight, and ensure that the funding either renews or that, you know, the end result is looked upon positively and generates further activity towards full market transformation, really getting those evaluations insights as early and as often as possible, I think can strengthen that case. So just wanted to throw that in there. And of course, we're happy to chat about those principles with anybody who might want to discuss them.
Yeah.
But thanks.
Yeah, thank you for that. We're going to go a little bit over, but I want to make sure to get to Nikki and then Claire to wrap us up.
Great, I'll be brief. I just want to reinforce just how excited I am about the LMI focus of the Homes and HEEHR programs and of IRA in general. I think that there is just such a tremendous opportunity here to reach the hardest to reach, the most underserved communities that traditional programs for decades have just not been able to serve. You know, there's so many different reasons for that. And I think that, you know, having also worked in this industry through ARRA, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, I'm excited for the longer time horizon to really be able to delve into those harder questions of how to reach these folks. You not having to deal with utility cost effectiveness tests, I think really presents an opportunity here to serve more people. And I want to also call out the M in LMI. Like, I think that there's been this, you know, donut hole for years and years around moderate income folks that, you know, are just above the income guideline for traditional low income programming and yet really cannot afford these new technologies. And the focus on bringing these communities forward and not leaving them behind in this transition is just really of utmost importance.
Yeah, Maddie, I'll just mention, you know, you asked the question, what do you hope for? You know, so, you know, BlockPower, as I mentioned, is a Black-led company. We're focused on justice, environmental justice, and J40 communities. So I think what BlockPower really looks to for this program is to have a whole cloth economic transformation that is, you know, facilitated through the IRA and these rebates, and for low and moderate income communities and household members to benefit through this transition, which really translates directly to improvements in health and safety and well-being of households and, you know, low and moderate income communities. So this is a program, obviously, in a roundtable to talk about the structure of the program. You know, after a 10-year period or a longer period of time, you know, these benefits will accrue to the households that we're all very passionate about addressing. So thank you.
Thank you. What a nice note to leave us on for the day. Thank you to our panel, and thank you to everyone, panel included, for taking the time to respond to the NASEO RFI. I know it's not an easy thing to put together, so really appreciate the time you took to put all of this together. I will send around the link once it is live to everyone who's here. And then, of course, I'm happy to facilitate whatever follow-up people are interested in anytime. And I hope to see you next week for our next roundtable. The link to register is in the chat, buried a little bit back, but also on the NASEO events page. With that, thanks everybody. Have a great and restful weekend. Have a good one.